Everybody, we'll try to keep the meeting quick today because the weather's so beautiful. Get you out of here so you're not sitting in this room. We'll start off with our committee summary reports. We'll start off with the TAC. Gary?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since the last General Policy Board meeting in December, Executive Board Advisory Committee meetings were held in January and February. Topics discussed at the meetings included program and project updates provided on ODOT's 2020 urban boundary adjustments, the Little Yankee Run non-point source implementation plan, an update on the planning process for Safe Streets for All was presented, as was Eastgate's economic development program and broadband work updates. Project and funding information was provided on the following: Eastgate's planning grant applications, the Appalachian Regional Commission program funding opportunities were also discussed, which included the full list of projects for the Appalachian Community Grant Program. The current STBG and TAP applications were presented and reviewed those meetings. The Ohio Public Works Commission final project list was presented at the January meeting. At the February meeting, open active transportation funding opportunities were presented, which included safe routes to school and Clean Ohio trail funding. No resolutions were reviewed in January and February. And the next TAC meeting will be April 4th, 10 a.m. here at Eastgate. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Citizens Advisory Board.
Yes, I'm Genevieve Germanet. Since the last General Policy Board meeting, the Citizens Advisory Board met in January and February. In January, Justin Mondock, Eastgate's Director of Planning, provided an introduction to the Citizens Advisory Board by explaining the role of the committee and its function in the structure of the agency. Jim Knick provided a summary of the past year's accomplishments and the focus areas for 2024. And lastly, Tricia Diavagnon shared information on the fiscal year 2025 planning grant funding and application process. At the February meeting, Citizens Advisory Board reviewed the committee's bylaw language and discussed updates, which are currently being drafted. The committee will review the draft language over the next quarter and present any changes to the General Policy Board for review. The CAB is next scheduled to meet on April 4th and May 2nd. And this concludes the report. This is advisory board.
Thank you. Yes. Finance Executive Committee. Sure.
Yeah, the agency's checking account, the operating account is at $226,000, which is consistent with other years at this time. We have $529,000 in our savings rainy day fund that earns interest for the agency. The project funds, which we hold for projects in the community, is at $5.4 million, and earning interest that we reinvest into the community projects. Dues went out last week to our members. Our OPWC invoices will probably be out. I expect them in the next 2 months. And that puts us in good financial standing. We'll be underway this week. We'll start our fiscal year 2023 audit with the outside accounting firm for the state auditors.
So, any questions? Hey, Jim, did you want to say a few things?
Sure. You could tell they were trying to get out of here quick because they didn't put me on the agenda to speak at all. So I'm really expediting the meeting. So that means I got to be brief, though. And I will be, I promise. I just want to give a handful of updates on some of the initiatives that everybody's probably wondered about. First is the Appalachian Community Grant Program. We're still waiting to hear word. They told us first couple of weeks of March. We're in March. I know there's a controlling board meeting on the third Monday of the month, and we're hoping that whatever they're doing with the grant program will be asked for approval by the controlling board on that date. So then we'll be in a position hopefully to make some big announcements here in the very near future. But it got pushed back a month in from February to March. And we're excited about the opportunities that are in front of us. And as soon as we hear something, because it affects all the communities here in the room, I will make sure everybody's aware. Again, got to be whatever projects do get funded and come through, Eastgate will administer and assist the communities to make sure those are very successful and on time and on budget projects. I just wanted to mention the housing strategy and assessment that's still going underway. It's coming. We're having a stakeholder meeting on April 17th. If you weren't invited yet, you will be. The announcement will be going out soon, but we're looking for an update from our consultant. We had a robust group last time. We want to grow the initiative. We have a lot of people asking about the initiative. I can tell you I was in Washington 2 weeks ago, and the agenda from all the communities across the country was housing. So we want to turn around and be leaders in our communities on making sure we have the right information and the right strategy to move forward. Looking forward to that input from our stakeholders again, and then really helping with the strategy as we develop it for years to come. Repopulation, want to give a quick update. I think sometimes people don't hear about it. They don't think things are going on. Certainly, you're going to hear a ton of information today from Emil and Chris, focusing on what we've done behind the scenes. Part of that effort will be accelerated once funding's in place and fingers are crossed through that ACGP program through Appalachia. We have money in there to accelerate that program for repopulation. I want to just focus that we've working with the chamber also on repopulation and working with the Business Journal to really keep us and all our communities apprised of what's going on, the good work being done, and helping us to get that message out. I think one thing that's most important on immigration, when anybody talks about immigration, it's legal immigration. There's some confusion out there that's not helped by some of the talk radio, but it's legal immigration we're focusing on. It's returning young people or anybody to the area, and it's retaining our young people from leaving here. Last comment I want to have is our Power Coalition got restarted this past week, talking about water and wastewater. That came to the forefront from the difficulties we had from an economic development standpoint in Lordstown. And businesses and industry are not looking at that area as aggressively because of the difficulties to get everybody, communities to play nice. We started a coalition, have a consultant that's utility consultant that's experts in these fields, been bringing us to the report, brought a handful of people in the communities together. In the last year, we've asked them to carry the torch. We had great conversations with those communities. And now they're focusing on a project area, this State Route 45, Bailey Road, from North Jackson all the way through Warren, and looking at those areas for development and look at those areas for where the water and wastewater, where we need some resolutions to move some things forward, get those communities and water suppliers and the sanitary, everybody on the same page. I will tell you that I was shocked when we had so many stakeholder meetings, and we appreciate the participation, but you bring those people in a room and they didn't know each other. Like, well, no wonder we're not getting anywhere. Nobody knows who they are. They're introducing themselves. I mean, it's okay. We got to fix that. So this will be certainly a step in the right direction. Last thing, because I don't want to steal time from our guest speakers today, is our annual meeting. The save a dates, if they didn't go out, will be going out. Annual meeting is May 15th this year. Past years, over 300 people. We welcome people to come out again. It'll be half day, but the networking opportunities and just an opportunity to just hear what other communities are doing and hear what our initiatives is we're focusing. We'll bring expertise in there to help guide us on some of that direction, but I look forward to everybody kind of gathering that day also. So I do want to comment, thanks for coming out in person. It's starting to feel like we're getting back to pre-COVID, because I was telling somebody it was our first time to this meeting, and I go, and we had 60, 70 people in this room prior to COVID. I get it. I get why some people are virtual, but I do appreciate the in-person because the conversation, we start a little bit late because conversations are in the hallway, in the back of the room, and in the offices. So that's how things get done. So thank you.
Thanks, Jim. At this point, I'm going to ask Justin Mondock to come up for the business meeting and introduce our speakers.
Okay. Thank you, Pat. I have the distinct honor of introducing our guest speakers today. Many of you in the room are familiar with one of them, Emil Wisniewski, who's been our special projects coordinator for quite some time. really does the heavy lifting on a lot of these initiatives that we don't necessarily have a history in working in, but we want to make sure that we're pushing things and pursuing things in an appropriate direction and following up on things in a way that makes sense, are efficient, and productive. But also joining AML is a new face, I think, to many of you in this room, but not to me. It's almost been a decade that I've had the profound privilege of working alongside Chris Cologne. We met in an emerging leaders program at the Wien Foundation several years ago, and through that, worked together to create something new. So I won't give away too much of the secret, but just know that Chris has been a great partner to work with on this project that he'll be talking about, and something that is now dovetailing into the work here at Eastgate. So it's kind of a convergence of my two worlds outside of the office and the work that I've gotten to do here over the last decade. So a beautiful thing to see happen, but I will gladly hand over the podium to both Emil and Chris.
Thank you, Justin. And did you want me to go first, Chris, or? All right. I do have some slides to go through. I promise that I've kept this, most of the updating of this slide deck was deleting slides, so that keeps with our expediency theme here. So I will give you a little bit of an overview on what we're calling the talent retention, expansion, and attraction effort. And a lot of you may have heard about that as repopulation. And we're using this more broad talent retention, expansion, and attraction effort because we want to be clear, we're trying to grow our population in the Valley, and we're not replacing anybody. This is a much more positive term, but certainly the term repopulation has been out there. And the reason is because we've lost a lot of people over the last 50 years. And actually by percentage of regional population loss is the second largest for a major metro in the country over the last decade. So we're starting to see some recent signs out of COVID that our population is slowly upticking, which is good. And we want to give a more positive spin on this. So we'll be talking about talent attraction and retention going forward. As far as today's agenda, I want to give a little bit of a project overview, a little bit about the 3 R's of our effort, retaining existing talent, returning residents who've left, and receiving new residents. And that includes, as Jim said, legal immigrants. Talk a little bit about our Workforce Welcome Center. This is a request that we have fingers crossed we're going to hear good news on through the Appalachian Community Grant, and then some next steps on our strategy. And I will stress that I'm just the consultant who Googles things and looks things up. Chris is the guy, boots on the ground, who's living this every day. So he'll tell you about the impact. Next slide, please. Mission to retain, expand, and attract the talent needed to build a workforce and entrepreneurial ecosystem in the Youngstown-Warren region that results in sustainable population and economic growth for future generations. Pretty simple mission statements. Again, our 3 R's: retain existing residents, return homegrown talent. We've heard all stories. Jim always tells it about his kids going away to Charlotte and Columbus. We want people who grew up here, whether they go to school here locally or go somewhere else, we want them to come back, have a career here, raise a family, retire here. And then receive. This is new Americans, including new residents, so people from any part of the country, and new Americans, which we are calling legal immigrants and refugees. And I'll get into that distinction in a little bit. Next slide. So just some case studies we looked at, and the regional chamber was very helpful. Mike McGiffin, his efforts, Lisa Long at the Jewish Foundation, in just connecting us with some other communities that were similar, maybe not the top metros in terms of population or the first ones you think to visit, but Tulsa, Buffalo, Greensboro, North Carolina. These are some communities that are doing some interesting things to attract people and retain them in their regions. So just to go over some of those tools they're using, they're actually going out there and doing recruitment tours proactively. And these tours are really pitching the region not as a tourist destination, not we're going to show you the things you might do once a year. We're going to show you your day-to-day existence, what that might be like, where you might shop, where you might live, where you might dine and recreate. We've seen a lot of these communities enhance their workforce connections locally to the talent pipeline. So again, just getting the employers into the schools, into the trades, into the community colleges, into the high schools, just to really make that connection and keep people in the area and make them aware of the opportunities. A lot of support for young leaders and local makers. So those that do something besides what we call, the knowledge economy now, people who use their hands, who make a product or a craft. A lot of these communities have done testimonials for those people that have stayed in the area or come back. And it's kind of nice. They have some video shots, some quotes on the website, but you can see firsthand why these people came back to the region. And oftentimes the message is, hey, I left this area because I didn't think there was opportunity. I heard from my family that things weren't going well here, but I come back 2 decades later, 5 years later, whatever it might be, and things have really turned around, and you should revisit your hometown or this place you may have never heard of to see what it's all about. Speaking directly to the Eastgate work that I'm so involved in is this idea of placemaking. It just reinforces the need for the river of opportunity and the Mahoning Valley. Everything that Jim's and his team's been championing is all these communities are marketing vibrant mixed-use spaces. They're marketing their greenways, their trails, those places that attract people and retain them, whatever makes you quirky, rather than just a generic suburban shopping mall. So I think this is a critical piece. Last but not least is just housing and rent assistance for people coming into the region. And this is not just refugees, but people who move into an area. We've seen employers provide assistance for down payments on houses, reduced rent, all sorts of different amenities, co-working space for regions that have targeted remote workers, which is certainly an option here with our lower cost of living if somebody has a job where they can work anywhere. Next slide, please. So a big piece of this is marketing. We just got out of a meeting downstairs at the regional chamber, and they're really heading up our marketing effort. And again, some of the things that communities are marketing are their downtowns, their unique dining scenes, again, parks and trails, quality neighborhoods and housing, arts and culture, diversity, music, those authentic experiences, and certainly the entrepreneurship and educational ecosystem, which is, I think, a strength in our region. Everyone loves sports. And I think, with what you guys have going on here, these are things that we can just do a better job of telling the story and the unique history. Just to look by the data, one thing as we went through this is, well, where did people go? So we looked at it. This is pre-COVID. So for a 5-year period, the last 2016 through 2020, top 10 metro destinations by number of people. Pittsburgh was number 1, which is interesting, but you'll see that these are all close areas. The remaining 3 out of the remaining 5 are Northeast Ohio, and then Columbus, which we kind of figured. You see Erie, PA, and Phoenix is kind of the outlier there, but 6 of these 10 in Ohio and 2 of them very close in PA. So interesting to see these numbers. Next slide, please. To look at people who left the state, obviously Pittsburgh and Erie we just talked about in Phoenix, but Florida, Chicago, you'll see Philly, Miami, Vegas, Dallas Metroplex. So again, those numbers drop as you get further and further away, but a lot of people that didn't go too far. So that's interesting for us to note. And hopefully these are importantly for us when we go and do social media blasts and some of the targeted marketing that the tech gurus can pay for with your web searches and all that. These are some of the places we need to be looking at because we know there are people with a tie to this region. That was the retain and return. The receive piece, one case study we've looked at in a lot of depth is Utica, New York. And if you're not familiar with Utica, this is upstate New York, post-industrial. I won't say Rust Belt since it's not a part of our vernacular, but very much a community that suffered a huge population loss, very similar to this area. And they were at a peak population of over 100,000, and they dropped all the way down to 40,000 in their city limits. So pretty staggering. What was interesting was they kind of got in on this refugee resettlement really when this started around 1980, and they've been doing it now over 40 years. They've seen an uptick in their population, and at this point, a quarter of their residents are foreign, which is pretty staggering. A good case study for us because they have a regional welcome center. They used to call it the Mohawk Valley, which is their version of Mahoning Valley, their region center for refugees. They recently rebranded that to be the center or the welcome center. kind of going in line with our theme is we want to welcome everybody, whether that's somebody who has just not been able to participate in the economy for one reason or another, somebody returning from addiction, returning from incarceration, whatever the case might be. We want to be welcoming and ensure everybody enjoys in the economic success. And that's something we've heard loud and clear from our local communities is, hey, we have people here already who are struggling. How do we get them involved and uplift them as part of this effort? But this is a staff of 50. So this grew quite a bit over time. We're talking maybe doesn't start as we talk about our Workforce Welcome Center and scaling it up. Next slide. Just to look at economic impacts. Why do we want refugees? Well, they help build our economy. So these are some statewide figures on the number of refugees. And again, that's a legal status. So a refugee is somebody who has gone through 2 types of screening at the federal level. They're the most screened people who come into this country. They've gone through Homeland Security. They've gone through Health and Human Services screening. And they basically won the lottery and really have gone through a lot of loopholes to get here. So this is a big distinction from somebody in Texas is sending us a busload of people seeking asylum. That's not the case what we're talking about. We're talking about somebody coming through a resettlement agency like a Catholic Charities, like a Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services, and they will have resources to help them get on their feet for a certain number of months. They'll have a caseworker, and we're going to connect them with our business community so that we have jobs for them. But again, just the taxes paid annually, over 500 million due to refugees. I think when we talk about a declining tax base in the Mahoning Valley, this is something that should resonate. Just a couple myths that I want to dispel. Immigrants do not pay taxes. They're completely wrong. They pay taxes, and that's something that is going to benefit our communities. We've heard people say, well, immigrants, that's a drain on our economy. That's a drain on our resources. Completely incorrect. Cities with a higher percentage of foreign-born residents have directly correlates with a higher regional economic activity and output. So this is something, having that foreign talent, having that growth is something that's going to help build our economy. And last but not least, immigrants and refugees take away jobs from Americans. Immigrants and refugees are much more likely to be entrepreneurial and start their own business, 30% more than someone born here. So they're creating jobs, and we all know that small businesses are the engine of economic growth in our region. So just a couple partner updates. We're working closely with Catholic Charities to help support their effort to start a resettlement agency here in the Mahoning Valley. This would be a sub-office of their Cleveland Resettlement Agency, but it would be dedicated staff and boots on the ground. And they'd be working with Chris hand in hand for some of these wraparound services. And they would be a regional anchor tenant in our Workforce Welcome Center, which I'll talk about here in a second. So looking at the former Mahoning National Bank building, just catty corner and down the street, this is part of our Lake to River Appalachian Community Grant request, a part of that $156 million that you've all seen in the papers that we've got our fingers crossed about. We're looking for $2 million in gap closure for a mixed-use redevelopment of that building. And within that building, we are going to have a workforce welcome center to welcome new residents to the region and new Americans, being our refugees and immigrants. So you might say, well, what is a workforce welcome center? What am I doing here? How am I welcoming somebody? So we have one aspect of this is reception and placement services. So that would directly speak to Catholic Charities and any other resettlement agency that might pop up in our region. We're talking about a preferred employer program where we know through the regional chamber and those strong business relationships they have that certain employees are hiring and they could use refugees, and particularly important, they could use people who don't speak English. This just came up in our meeting is you need to have somebody that can translate and speak a language that might not be Spanish, something else, Congolese, whatever it might be. These employers have jobs that speak to those types of opportunities. Housing support, so we're talking Ian Benison and YMDC, trying to find ways to help build the housing, which ties in with the regional housing strategy, and support rent and down payment assistance through employers and through philanthropic sources. Banking and financial services. So a lot of refugees have never participated in any kind of financial system, anything close to us. So there's some coaching that needs to take place. A lot of these countries, they don't have any kind of mortgage system or any type of credit. So establishing those things and understanding how our financial system works, how taxes work. A lot of countries just take things, like you have tax withholdings. Well, at the end of the year, that's it. You paid your taxes. There's no submitted tax form. So those are things we have to bring people up to speed on. Workforce is certainly support for somebody who has English as a second language is critical in that. Healthcare and insurance, again, a lot of countries, this is all taken care of for them, single payer systems. This is kind of a uniquely American issue. So we have to help get these people those resources. And last but not least, wraparound services, connections to transit, childcare, broadband for mobile devices. All of those are things that we can help these people out with through our workforce wellness. So a little bit small here because we're just kind of formulating this in our action plan. But the key takeaway is that all our community partners are engaged. The Youngstown-Warren Regional Chamber is really heading up that marketing piece and our connection to the business pipeline. We have YNDC and others helping out on the housing front. Eastgate is championing the regional housing strategy, which really is so critical to this. It's a parallel effort. And we've heard over and over again that we need housing to host new residents and to attract the workforce. So those efforts are in lockstep. And just some others, in the area is just, getting all the tools we can to incentivize development here. So the Port Authority comes in here as our development partner to make sure that we're able to develop sites for housing and for new businesses that'll come in and employ workers. And that concludes my presentation. I'll turn it over to Chris to dig into.
Hi, everybody. As Amo and Jim said, I'm Chris Colon, and Justin introduced me. I am the co-founding executive director of Thrive Mahoning Valley. Started Thrive about 6 years ago alongside Justin as we saw people coming from Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, which is a territory of the United States, suffered 2 hurricanes back in 2017. Early 2018, we learned of a couple hundred individuals, about 130 families that had relocated to our area, and we wanted to find a way to help. So Justin and I sat down. We developed a resource guide in English and Spanish for those individuals, took that to the Wien Foundation and developed our organization called Thrive Mahoning Valley. And, that's one thing. But we realized real quick that providing a resource guide to people coming to our community wasn't enough. And so we pivoted, joined an organization called Welcoming America back in 2018. It's a nationwide organization that works on to highlight welcoming and what communities can be to bring in newcomers, and specifically around immigrants and refugees, but we're generally welcoming anyone into the community. And so we ran with that. Starting in 2018, we started Welcoming Week, Mahoning Valley. These are events that go alongside the national celebration of Welcoming Week. In mid-September, we started doing events here in the Mahoning Valley. And that first year, we did 16 events all over the region, highlighting how welcoming our community can be. We also did a listening campaign where we asked people, what made you feel welcomed here? Or vice versa, what made you not feel welcome here? And we had some very interesting responses in that first year that helped us, kind of decide what our work was going to do and how we were going to move forward. And so we did a strategic plan back then and then started to engage in the community, teaching about diversity and equity and how our community can be. And then like most organizations, we were affected by the pandemic. And so our work kind of stalled. We started, pivoting to just doing the policy side of things and the advocacy side of things, connecting with local organizations and working on their diversity efforts. We did some training in the Youngstown City Schools in their summer program on diversity and equity. And it was a lot of fun, but we saw the desire to do more in our community. And so, it brings us to where we are now over the last couple of years. And we see this interest in our community to repopulate. We see it just like everyone else. We had a population decline that sees our community suffering. And so we're here to amplify the benefits of welcoming refugees and immigrants into the community. Our goal over the next year is to become a secondary resettlement agency. A secondary resettlement agency is responsible for helping immigrants and refugees coming into the community after that initial first 90 days. So primary resettlement agency, and Amo mentioned Catholic Charities working to become that resettlement agency. We would support their work as a secondary resettlement agency and then work with these individuals for up to 2 years after they come to our community to help them acclimate, get access to services, and become citizens who support the overall infrastructure of our community. And so we're very excited to take on this work moving forward. Some of the programs we're doing now, we're assisting the International Programs Office at the Youngstown State University. If they have an international student that comes in and needs access to housing, resources, they're contacting us and other programs in the community, and we're assisting in that way. Last year, we brought 2 students in to the music programs at YSU. We assisted them finding housing and provided bikes to the students so that they can get back and forth to campus, into local grocery stores, which, there's not much close to downtown Youngstown. And so the bikes were very helpful for these international students. We're expanding that program this year and plan to provide 50 bikes to international students and other newcomers in the community. We're doing community conversations on immigration. We did our first one in December at the Unitarian Church in Youngstown, where we focused on the Latin American perspective. We had a great presentation from a DACA recipient who actually are in AmeriCorps Vista right now. We had a presentation from Community Legal Aid on the process of immigrants and refugees and how they become American citizens and how an undocumented person would become a documented person. It was a wonderful presentation and very well received that we're going to continue these conversations. We're looking in March or April to do the Asian American perspective and the Middle Eastern perspective 3 months later. And so we're gonna continue to highlight the community, how important bringing in newcomers is. And so look for those conversations to continue. Additionally, we're continuing our Welcoming Week celebrations this year in September. We've jumped on and are assisting our friends in developing Ola Fest, which is a celebration of Hispanic culture in town. We had the first celebration last September 22nd. This year, they just announced we're going to be on September 21st this year, right at the tail end of Welcoming Week. So we're really excited about that. We have several other programs, including Listen, Lead, Share, Serve, which is a program we're doing with Oh Wow. And we're teaching young people whose primary language is not English about future jobs in the community, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in any other industry. We're going in and teaching them specifically from a STEM perspective, all the jobs that are going to be available to them. And we're super excited about that. We have a great grant from the Ohio Climate Justice Fund to do that. Additionally, we're working in Youngstown City Schools in the English language program to provide resources to non-English speaking families. We're already seeing disparities in education and healthcare in the community for folks that are coming in, specifically if they don't speak English. The Youngstown City Health Department has relayed to us that there are significant health disparities beyond those that are already in our community. We already are suffering community from health disparities, but non-English speakers are suffering even more. So we're trying to help that. And we have a guide that we're giving families to access resources in their language. And additionally, we're working with organizations like OCA to help people navigate their the healthcare system in a language that they know. So we're super excited about that. We're working alongside partners like the English Center to make sure that folks coming in who don't know English can have the opportunities to learn English. And so we're doing language programs alongside them at the libraries, and we're looking to increase those services over the next year as well. The biggest thing we're working on, and what I've come here today to really highlight to you all, is an effort called Certified Welcoming. Certified Welcoming is a designation that's given by our parent organization, Welcoming America. And there are just over 20 cities across the country that receive this designation. And an interesting note, AMO listed slides of where people are going when they leave Youngstown. 8 of those 10 communities that people are going to are certified welcoming communities across this country. And 4 of them are right close to us. We have Toledo and Lucas County. We have Dayton. We have Erie, Pennsylvania. And just recently, just last 2 weeks, Cuyahoga County and Cleveland were certified welcoming. And these are communities where they have policies in place, they have the infrastructure, they have the services available to welcome new people in their communities. And they get this designation after a 6-month to a year process of ironing out all the things that are needed. And what we're looking for is a government entity here in the Mahoning Valley to join us in this work. While we're the nonprofit that can represent for Welcoming America this process, we need a government entity that's willing to step up and say, we want to be the anchor to getting this community to be certified welcome. So if any of you go back to your townships or your government entities and want to be part of this work, I ask you to give me a call, shoot me an email, and let's sit down and talk. So thank you very much. That's me. That's all right.
Questions?
Yeah.
All right.
No.
Nice day. You want to get out here.
Thank you, gentlemen. Excellent presentation. All right, next up, we have several resolutions for passage. The resolutions will be passed through email following the meeting. We have General Policy Board Resolution number 001-2024. It's a resolution amending the fiscal year 2024 through 2027 Transportation Improvement Program of the Eastgate Regional Council of Governments to reflect revisions to the state fiscal year 2024 capital improvement program for the Western Reserve Transit Authority. General Policy Board Resolution number 002-2024. The resolution of the Eastgate Regional Council of Governments approving the fiscal year 2025 planning grant recommendations. General Policy Board Resolution number 003-2024. Resolution amending the bylaws of the Eastgate Regional Council of Governments. Article 4, Eastgate Committees, Section A, Finance Executive Committee. All right, this point in time is open discussion. Do we have any comments, talking points? Being none, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Record.
Cut it short.
Yeah. If you have additional comment.
You can put it in the other-